Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
We are an inclusive faith community
seeking to live out the loving, just, and generous way of Jesus.
We are participants in a long tradition.
It's less concerned with doctrines and dogma that demand total agreement,
but a life to be lived, enjoyed, and given away to others.
What unites us is a growing awareness that life is precious.
That we are made by love in order to love.
This community is comprised of and affirms the entire human family.
Regardless of race, age, creed,
physical abilities, marital or economic status,
gender identity, or sexual orientation.
So, if you're curious and have come to see,
if you are tired and have come to rest,
if you are grateful and have come to share,
if you are wounded and have come to heal,
if you're joyful and have come to celebrate,
if you are uprooted and have come to belong,
welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Systems of oppression fueled by hate, held up by a lie we can't escape. Humanity, a history of tragedy. Does it have to be the future of us all? Hear our prayer, hear your people, turn our hearts to you, make us whole again. Hear our prayer, hear your people, turn our hearts to you, make us one. Power, struggles, fear, and shame. Will the story always be the same? Will we ever be the people we are meant to be? Does this have to be the future of us all? Hear our prayer, hear your people, turn our hearts to you, make us whole again. Hear our prayer, hear your people, turn our hearts to you, make us one. Hear our prayer.
Hi Crosspointe, thanks for joining us today. Just a few announcements, so I'll dive right in. Throughout the year, Crosspointe hosts a series of community conversations, and the next one will be October 5th, following in-person service. Its title is Man Enough, a healthy vision of masculinity, and it will be led by Crosspointe's very own Ben Murray. Now, Ben isn't just a longtime Crosspointe attendee. He's also a longtime educator and presenter on topics like this across the nation. So with Ben, we'll peel back the layers of the onion on this idea of masculinity and talk about research and analysis about how our society simultaneously condemns, glorifies, and regulates this set of behaviors. It will be fun and interactive, and ultimately will push back on stereotypes and reframe this idea of masculinity in a way that helps build a healthier community and identity. Registration is required, and there will also be childcare provided if you register ahead of time. It's also going to be a potluck, so to sign up to come, to get childcare, to add a dish to the table, you can go to crosspointe.org/events/community conversations. Now, this time of year is also when we love to send care packages to our college students and our recent high school grads who are doing something other than college to show them that we're thinking about them and to send love. If you are the parent of a college student or a 2025 high school grad that's doing something other than college and you'd like them to get a package, you can go to crosspointe.org/events/care packages and sign them up. We are also looking for donations for those packages, so you can go to that same location and see our sign-up genius for what we're looking to have donated. You can bring it in throughout the rest of this month and the beginning of October and put it in a bin that we'll have in the lobby. These care packages will be assembled by our Primetimers team. And that brings me to my next announcement. Our Primetimers group is for retirees and empty nesters and anything in between, and they will have their first fall meeting on October 12th. At that meeting, they'll assemble these care packages, and they'll also have Crosspointe's Doug Horton as a guest speaker. It'll be an amazing chance to hear him speak, and lunch will be provided. There will be a dessert potluck, and so to sign up to attend or to bring a delicious dessert, you can go to crosspointe.org/primetimers. The Primetimers group will also have a couple volunteer opportunities this fall at the North Carolina Food Bank. The first one will be October 7th, and registration is required through the food bank, but you can go to that same spot, crosspointe.org/primetimers, and find the link to register and all the necessary information. Well, those are all my event announcements, and so now at this point, I'd love to welcome you to help us fund all the amazing and good things that we do at Crosspointe. We cannot do it without you, and we are so grateful for your contributions. So if you would like to financially contribute to all that we do, you can go to crosspointe.org/contribute, or you can text Crosspointe NC to 77977, and it will walk you through all the ways that you can do it. Checks, debit card, PayPal, stock, pretty much anything. We are so grateful for you, and thank you for joining us today. That's all I've got. Have a beautiful day.
Mother, there's too many of you crying. Brother, there's far too many of you dying. We've got to find a way to bring some loving here today. Oh, Father, we don't need to escalate. War is not the answer, for only love can conquer hate. You know we've got to find a way to bring some loving here today. picket signs. Don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me so you can see what's going on. Yeah, what's going on. Oh, mother, everybody thinks we're wrong. Oh, but who are they to judge us? Simply 'cause our hair is long gone. You know we've got to find a way to bring some understanding here today. Picket lines and picket signs. Don't punish me with brutality. Oh, talk to me so you can see what's going on. What's going on? Yeah, what's going on? Oh, what's going on? What's going on?
If I were to ask you which countries are the most powerful, defined as a superpower, you probably would have a pretty quick, short list. You probably would start with the US. If you are in the US, you might even do that if you don't live here. We would be maybe naming those countries based on their economies, maybe. These countries are the most powerful because they have the highest GDP or whatever. And maybe some of us think that that's a question about population, but let's be honest, most of us know when we talk about a superpower, we're really talking about military might. The most powerful countries are those who have the ability to most use violence to defend themselves and their interests. Those are what the superpowers are. A superpower is a country most capable, most willing to dominate by using force. And so in this way of thinking about power and being powerful, and I would argue that's the most common way of framing it, violence is the final expression of power. And so today I want to talk about a couple of things. And I want to start by talking briefly about power and about violence. But what I'm doing in the first part of this message, if I'm successful, is I want to direct our attention beyond this message, because I'm not going to solve anything, trust me. I want to point us to hopefully what will be ongoing conversations about power and violence and our role in evolving those definitions and the way that we use these ideas. So for the broader societal political part of what I'm saying here in the beginning of the message, I want to point to the work of Walter Wink and maybe especially Hannah Arendt, and insist that you read their stuff. I don't know what my insistence will do to your homework, your sense of obligation about doing it. But Arendt especially, as it pertains to one major idea, she was a philosopher who did a lot of work on totalitarianism, explaining it, and she spoke often of violence in a way that at first seems novel, but then I think it shows us something we've actually known on some level all along. And one of her core ideas is this, and it comes from this book on violence. Really short read, as you can see. Highly recommend. Power and violence are opposites, where the one rules absolutely, the other is absent. It's a suggestion that really seems unintuitive at first until we consider it. Power, according to Arendt, is not something I have or you have when it comes to having power in the political sphere or affecting the sphere in which we shape the world, the culture that we live in. Power, she says, is only something we have as we work together. She said, power corresponds to the human ability not just to act, but to act in concert. Power is never the property of an individual. It belongs to a group and remains in existence only so long as the group keeps together. When we say of somebody that he is in power, we actually refer to his being empowered by a certain number of people to act in their name. The moment the group from which the power originated to begin with disappears, his power also vanishes. And so what she asserts, we can recognize. When we see that the power we had is vanishing, is no longer having its effect, we're losing influence, what often comes next is a desire to get that power back, that control back, and we use aggression and violence to do it. Because violence is about force, and force is what's necessary when people are losing control, no longer collaborating, working in concert. That's why when we see bottom-up collaborating, democracy, it's the people working together. It's the will of the people. But when it becomes just a few governing, or a minority of people governing top-down, well, that's authoritarianism, to say the least. And so that's not about consent of the governed, that's about obedience. So when people protest, or even when they riot, in large part what they're saying is, we no longer consent. They are withdrawing their support from the power structure. And very often, what is the response by those who require consent to remain in power? Well, they respond with physical force. We've seen it a million times in just the last decade. And they will, of course, use violence. But not because they have power, even though they will in the immediate be overpowering somebody. Not because they have any power, but because they are losing it. So to whatever extent we see those in power using more force, threatening more physical violence and control, the more we are seeing a, granted, sophisticated, we're seeing an act of even sophisticated desperation to retain control. In this way, power and violence are opposites on the political level and frankly, on the smaller interpersonal levels that we exist in day to day. Even with the immediate ability to overpower somebody, it's not actual power. It's the fear of losing power, which is the consequence of not working with other people anymore. Just like the bully on the playground, or the loudmouth insulting bully in the workplace or the classroom. They may seem powerful because they're loudest and most willing to be harsh and violent, but they fundamentally don't know how to collaborate or tolerate diversity of thought or of outcome. And so they try to intimidate and force because they're losing power. And in that moment, again, they may seem powerful, but they're the weakest. They only become strong again as they allow themselves to be an equal part of the group. So I'm saying all this because the next thing I want to say, and I'm sorry to say, is many of us should have recognized this with the most clarity. Those of us who call ourselves followers of Jesus. But we are often the people who miss it most tragically. And I don't know this for sure, but in my observation over the years, many of us in the church have gotten so caught up in the idea of Jesus as king, as the authority, that we completely forgot the other metaphor of Jesus as our brother, a sibling and friend who shares with us his spirit, shares with us a collective, nonviolent, unforced power, which is another way of describing the church. We got so hung up on one of Paul's song lyrics, that every knee shall bow, as he puts it in one of his letters, that we stopped recognizing the gospel imagery is that Jesus bows first. Jesus washes our feet and then invites us to mimic him, to follow him. He never invites us to worship him or be lorded over by him, but to join him as co-laborers, humble and gentle, just, generous co-laborers. We're sharing in this power. And so we've taken this ignorance that we've inherited as Christians in the West, and naturally we apply it to our vision of, well, then what would make America powerful? And you don't just have to be American. Lots of other nations have done this. What would make us powerful? It's the same thing the bully or anyone not imbued with the spirit of love and justice and peace. It's the same thing anybody would come up with. Well, might is right. That's one of the first things you learn as a little kid. Whoever can do the most harm with their bodies gets their way. Work together if you can, but crush those who resist you. This is not the way of Jesus. This is the way of the machine that killed Jesus and then went extinct a few generations later, ancient Rome. And so this is not me overstating things. It really isn't. The first person I brought this up to just last week, I said, this is what I'm talking about this next Sunday. The very first person I brought this up to immediately recognized what I was talking about and had just had a first-person experience with this the previous night. He shared that his son goes to a Christian school, and after recent events involving the murder of a celebrity, the message board of that school lit up like a Christmas tree with parents talking about what needs to happen. And one mother posted the absolute importance of people having a measured response, respecting nuance in people, highlighting peace and love, the Bible's overall message, that sort of thing. I've redacted the response that I wanted to highlight for you. I've taken out all the names and the unhelpful stuff. But here's what another parent, a father, said about her in response. He said, don't let people like the woman who posted this, who might mean well, don't let her win. This is the time we put the Bible down and pick up the sword. Some of you, like the mom who posted this, might not understand what that means, but I know many of you do. And you can see the responses in the bottom corner. The laugh emoji, I was hoping it was mostly laugh emojis, but it was just one. Apparently a lot of other parents thought this guy had a good point. And why? Because many of us have gotten so very, understandably, confused by what power actually looks like. So much that even at a Christian school dedicated to teaching children something close to the way of Jesus, we can't even recognize ourselves denying Jesus and calling for weapons in his name. But we can change this. We really can. I mean, this is one little anecdote that I've shared with you, but you have seen your own version of this, and in many ways, going all the way out to Christian nationalism, to just how some of us have learned to talk about some of this. We have a problem, but we can change this. So hang with me here, because I promise this is all going somewhere helpful, even if we're not going to solve the whole thing in one message. This is going somewhere helpful for those of us who are trying to step into the cultural moment we find ourselves in, to step into that well. So let's take a second, come up for air, maybe with a tension-relieving science fact. Did you know seals do something called banana posing? This pose regulates their temperature and relaxes them. So if you'd like, strike a banana pose, release some tension, and then we'll lean back in. Okay, we're about to make a shift, but first it's important here to deal with the passage that the man on the message board is bastardizing, especially in service to this broader societal point, because so many people do this. Jesus, toward the end of Luke's gospel, is telling them that there's about to be a shift in how they're received when they go to villages. Jesus knows those who use violence to protect their sense of influence and power are about to do their thing. So he asks his disciples, when I sent you all out without a purse, bag, sandals, did you end up lacking anything? They said, no, not a thing. He said to them, but now the one who has a purse must take it, and likewise a bag. And the one who has no sword must sell his cloak and buy one. For I tell you, the scripture must be fulfilled in me. And then Jesus quotes from Isaiah, which at that point in history was already 8 centuries old. It uses it as a prophecy about himself. And he was counted among the lawless. And indeed, what is written about me is being fulfilled. They said, Lord, look, here are 2 swords we already have. And he replied, it is enough. Ask yourself, it's enough for what? 2 swords, at least 12 disciples. 2 swords is only enough for 2 of them to play pirate ship. So what is he talking about? 2 swords is enough. Because if he's talking about violence against the violent in order to preserve our team, the God Squad, it is not enough. Because you either need far more swords and far more people to defeat Rome at their own game, and they're really good at swords. Or you don't need any swords because God can do anything and doesn't even need the 2 swords. But see what he's actually saying there. He says, go get some swords to fulfill an old prediction about what is going to happen and how I'm going to be labeled. After all the good that you guys have done, watch, they're going to turn, because now the people in power are going to try to vilify you. And he's quoting a little segment of a larger verse in Isaiah that all Jews knew by heart. The disciples already knew all the lyrics around just the couple of lyrics Jesus shared. The text actually goes, I will give him a portion or a position among the great, and he will divide the spoils with the strong, because he poured out his life unto death and was numbered with the transgressors. For he bore the sin of many and made intercession for those transgressors. So Jesus is appealing to an old picture of a man who's going to come and, despite appearances, get to sit among the great and divide spoils like a hero of old, but it's going to be different because he pours out his own life and is numbered or counted among the transgressors in the process of standing in the gap for those transgressors. So the swords aren't for fighting, because the imagery is about pouring himself out, not slaying others so that they are poured out. Anybody can do that. The swords are cosplay to complete a picture. They're like costumes. It's guerrilla theater. The Prince of Peace is putting on a show to fulfill a picture. So if you're not convinced by that, here's the story, how it continues a paragraph later in Luke's Gospel. While Jesus was still speaking, suddenly a crowd came, and the one called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. He approached Jesus to kiss him. You kiss your teacher on the hand. But Jesus said to him, oh, Judas, it's with a kiss of respect that you're going to betray the Son of Man. When those who were around him saw that what was coming, they asked, Lord, should we strike with the sword? We've got the 2 swords, remember. Then one of them, Peter, struck the slave of the high priest and cut off the guy's right ear. You can imagine he was trying to take his head off, but just got his ear. But Jesus said, no more of this. No more of this. Not, well, do more of this later. Wait a couple thousand years and then do a whole bunch more of this in my name. No more of this, he says. And he touched the guy's ear and healed him. The Gospel of Matthew adds to this story a little more from Jesus to Peter. He heals the guy's ear, and then it says, then Jesus said to him, put your sword back in its place. And by the way, it's not like a sword, like for sword fighting, like you might be thinking. Peter's a fisherman. It's just a big fishing knife, a fillet knife. Put away that big knife, Peter, for all who take the sword will die by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? See, it's not a violent revolution. Why? Because who has the power? Jesus knows what's happening and is not going to give up power and trade it for violence. So he says to Peter, you don't think that I would have thought to conjure an army from my Father if that worked? Me, I only need 2 fish and 5 loaves guy for catering an entire village. You don't think I could put in a request for a military if that was effective, if that was good? Those who live by the sword die by the sword, because those who confuse violence for power enter into a cycle of desperate attempts to conquer while being conquered. And round and round and round it goes, passed back and forth, down to children, down to grandchildren, and peace never comes. Put away your sword. No more of this. Now, does this mean self-defense is unchristian? No. Does this mean defending your home against an intruder is unchristian? No. Does this mean that there's never a justification to step in with force to stop one group from hurting another vulnerable group, or one nation against another nation? No. Complicated conversations, but no, that doesn't, there's no formula there. Just be careful to observe how these questions chase down all these whatabouts until the questions start to no longer be about the countless wise, constructive, humane solutions there are to complex issues before violence is ever on the table. More and more questions that sort of serve as, well, when can I use violence? It's as if using violence is the default. Like, well, since that's the ultimate power, how many hoops do I have to jump through for Jesus before I get to use it? Observe that. The power of love is the default for those of us trying to follow Jesus. And violence is often the loudest signal that that power has been abandoned. And so let me say here, if you are thinking of violence, you think that you're a good person, and you might be, but you're thinking of using violence as a response to the world changing, to your world changing, your corner of it, or use it in response to others bringing disagreeable ideas and behaviors into your spaces, or use it as a response to other people annoying or offending you, or use it as a response to people who you think might use violence first, so you better get ahead of them. I want to right now say that I pray you'd recognize violence is not power. That you will not be, if you do this, solving problems, you'll be multiplying them. You're about to express lost power, lost creativity, abandoned humanity. I pray that you would see that the way of wisdom and love are a way of sharing power, a collective united by the Spirit, even as we disagree and bonk heads and sometimes have to take uncomfortable actions. But you are part of, if you'll allow yourself to be, part of a collective that's trying to figure out what works and what does not. And violence does not. Even if it temporarily allows you to overpower another, violence is not power. It's a very loud expression of desperation and lost power. And so the Spirit of Christ tells you and tells me, like it told Peter, put your sword away. Do not pick up the sword or any other way of violence. Put it away and follow. Okay, now here's the big shift. We're still on topic, still hoping that you'll go and maybe form a book group. Start with that and see what you can come up with. Continue the discussion as violence being antithetical to power, and see what you come up with. But I want to come now at this from a different angle, on the level of how you and I can engage this day to day, because we can feel rather powerless about how things are going sometimes. So this next part is very much connected to Jesus telling Peter to put his sword away. But we're going to go from how a movement on a larger communal, societal scale, how it empowers itself with collaborating, renouncing violence, now to how we recognize our individual role in putting our swords away, because that matters. How you evolve, how I evolve, that's how we evolve. And so this is work I think we can start doing today. In the early part of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, he's trying to help people understand the way of love and justice. It's a lot of counterintuitive stuff. And Matthew 5 quotes him saying, "You have heard it said to those of ancient times, you shall not murder." And everybody turned to each other like, yeah, I've heard that. I've never killed anybody. I'm one of the good guys. "And whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you that if you're angry with a brother or sister, you're going to be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you'll be liable to the council, to the Jewish court, the Sanhedrin. And if you say, you fool," and the Aramaic here is the word rakha, which I'm told has the connotation of spitting on somebody. If you say rakha, you will be liable to the fires of Hinnom Valley. And this is a place outside of Jerusalem. It's still there. It's associated with being accursed, with dying without any honor. So obviously anger is not a sin. Anger is emotion. There are no such things as sinful emotions. Paul even later says, be angry, just don't sin in that anger. So Jesus isn't saying don't ever be angry, especially with your brother or sister. That's going to happen. Instead, read Jesus as saying, you already know murder is bad. And so maybe we think that we don't have any more work to do on our journey because, well, I never killed anybody, so I've arrived at the spiritual peak. But the problem doesn't begin with the murder, with the violence itself, bad as that obviously is. Before the violence erupts, and for most of us never even erupts, Jesus says holding a kind of anger against your human siblings, a kind of anger that's no longer about what happened, but becomes about who or what the other person is, there's a kind of darkness that chooses to demean, to insult, to dehumanize, and this is an evil that Jesus puts on par with the violence itself. In our modern vocabulary, we could call this contempt. Contempt is simply speaking and acting toward another as though they are less than you, and perhaps even as though they are worthless to you. And contempt is an expression of disgust. It's in those words we use when we're no longer engaging with ideas that we disagree with, but we've moved to put down the person who has them. It's when we no longer take issue with something, but we indulge ourselves in a sense of disgust by saying, "You make me sick. Those people are garbage. He's trash. They are scum. She is so vile." You hear that? Those are all words that appeal to something disgusting. It's when we hear or see things that are wrong, and they often are, but we put our energy not toward a meaningful counter. We instead give ourselves to disgust, and you can feel it when you say, not, "This is why I disagree. Here's how I've thought about this. Here's how I've read about this." But, we say, "You're a piece of," and unless you're filling in the blank there with work, I bet whatever goes in that blank is something that evokes a sense of, ooh, this is disgust. It's the broad brush we paint them with, the name calling, the accusation that they all want to do evil, vile, terrible, ruinous things. They're all a stain on an otherwise pure world. Even as we accurately name others' actions as evil, requiring consequences, our heart has given itself to disgust. It's that reflex many of us have developed over the years, where as soon as we hear another team or group's slogan, we hear a politician's name, as soon as we hear an argument for something that we've heard a million times and still reject, we have a reflex that as soon as we see somebody's face on TV or in our own family, when we encounter someone of another ethnic background, another faith tradition, or whose body or whose sexuality, for some reason we've taken upon ourselves to have strong opinions about that, and it stretches beyond our own preferences. We encounter these things and we respond in a way that frames the others as an object of revulsion, filth, and impurity, being beneath our humanity. This is disgust. We're not addressing ideas, we're signaling revulsion at what the people, who those people who hold those ideas or embody those behaviors are. It's disgust. And once this disgust, this contempt for other human beings creeps in unchecked, please understand, we have stepped into the continuum of violence. And if there's a voice in you saying that this is an exaggeration, please let me redirect your attention to Jesus Christ of Nazareth, who says our words and behaviors, apart from traditional definitions of violence, while they're still intangible contempt, are a condemnable violence for those who seek to be counted in his number. But if that's not compelling to you, consider this. On the FBI Law Enforcement Bulletin, that's a repository for articles for law enforcement across our nation, it's been in place for almost 100 years. Doctors Matsumoto and Hoang and Frank posted some incredibly relevant research on this in an article entitled "The Role of Emotion in Predicting Violence." And in it, they point out that emotions that lead to violence follow a predictable path. It starts with outrage based on anger. This is an outrage aimed at those that they find have acted unjustly or simply threaten our preferred way of life. This isn't the phase that necessarily creates the violence. This is where it starts. So lots of people get angry and feel outraged. But they move to a second phase. And phase 2 is moral superiority based on contempt. This is when they interpret what made them angry in phase 1 as based on the outgroup being morally inferior. This is contempt. You did this because you are less than us. You are less than me. And then we enter into phase 3, elimination based on disgust. They say angry people have an increased heart rate and their blood flows differentially to their arms and hands. This prepares them to fight because anger functions to remove obstacles. So again, anger is a normal emotional and physiological response designed to give us data and a spike of energy to either use constructively or to metabolize, because there's no constructive way to use it. Totally normal, but they continue. However, disgust causes an individual to eliminate or reject contaminated objects. You catch that? Disgust is about elimination. We use disgust language as a way of communicating that someone has become an object to be expelled from the collective body, us. You make me want to puke. There's a real weight to that metaphor. You make me want to expel, to get rid of you as something other than us. Disgust causes an individual to eliminate or reject contaminated objects. As a primary function, contempt makes someone communicate their evaluations of another's actions vis-a-vis status and hierarchy. In other words, contempt and disgust immediately demand others be demoted beneath me, as having less worth, becoming lesser status than me. Therefore, anger focuses on a person's or group's actions, while contempt and disgust focus on who they are. Another paper put it this way: contempt triggers perceptions of strength and superiority over others, causing an imbalance that leads to a boost in status for those expressing contempt and a drop in status for those receiving it. So it's not just about the anger. It's about what happens next. Contempt, the platform our disgust speaks and acts from, takes another human being and makes them less than a human being. It can be less of a human being than I am, all the way to you're not a human being at all. And that should sound really familiar. Watch how this happens and you'll never unsee it. Watch how other people, they're not addressed for the issues or ideas that they bring to the table, or even their bad behaviors that should be addressed, but they become reduced to vermin, to disease, to animals. Why? Because contempt it comes disguised as righteousness, as superiority, and we fall for this trick. It's a trick that gives us permission to mistreat other people for what we think is our own good, to withhold love from other human beings. Because if I believe I'm superior, then whatever I plan to do or think or say, it's all justified, including violence. Now, I get many of us need to learn more resilience about words being spoken. There's a whole point I can make here about some people. They just insist that words and physical violence are the same, like almost always the same. Don't take it from me, but take it from those in marginal groups who've been catching slurs since God was young. We would do well to become harder to insult these days. There are so many people who have overcorrected here, and they've made it seem as though words function automatically like violence. And listen, that has done a disservice. It really has. And it also can have the eventual effect, we're seeing some of this, of threatening things like freedom of speech, which I know is on the political level, that's different than just the freedom to say whatever you want, consequences or no consequences. Just hear me say, there's an overcorrection that's happened here. The threat of violence in our speech, that's never okay. But then for everything else, I don't think violence and words that we don't like are automatically the same thing. We should say yes to the invitation to get better at knowing the difference and to build some resilience about the things said to us. A sign of maturity worth moving toward for all of us is to embody the truth that if somebody says something insensitive or off color or out of pocket at you, that's a reflection of them, not you. So this is really tangent, something that we would do well to really thicken our skin about. But contempt, words and attitudes that dehumanize, devalue other human beings, disgust. I never thought I'd say this sentence, but I'm saying it now. Jesus and the FBI are telling you to repent before you create the very flames of hell you're trying to douse. We have to get rid of the contempt inside of us and in our words. These attitudes, before they ever produce a corpse, and even though for the vast majority of us they never will, they're killing us. Online, in person, they're killing us. This isn't a preacher making up a fact to stir up some emotions. This is the God's honest truth. We already know from the Gottman Institute's research that the single greatest predictor of divorce is contempt. Contempt happening between the couple. That's between two people who know each other very well and have loved each other deeply. How much more can contempt destroy what connects the rest of us strangers? Our tradition holds that God created the whole universe by speaking it into existence, that words have creative, restorative power. So of course they have the power to destroy. As the writer of Proverbs 18 put it, words kill, words give life. They're either poison or fruit. You choose. Can I get an amen from a therapist? Because every therapist out there has multiple clients trying to rebuild themselves, not from simply physical violence, but from the ruinous contempt aimed at them in their childhoods. Contempt, disgust toward others, given space to become our words and opinions, is how violence against others takes its first shape. And if left unchecked, or maybe worse, if reinforced and celebrated by our team that we find ourselves on, ooh, they're gross, they're bad, they're less than us, it renders us a violent, powerless playground full of bullies who can quote the Bible and the founding fathers, but whose hearts are filling up with poison. My dear friends, as an imperfect people of love, of ever-expanding compassion for self and others, we must do away with contempt every time it surfaces in us. No exceptions. Now, as much as ever, we must put away disgust and contempt, even as others are feeding it. And in its place, prayerfully, we have to feel our disappointment and our anger, our grief, and then ask for enough curiosity and grace to go forward in the name of love. And I'm in this with you. This is such a difficult topic for me sometimes, given how other people act. It's so tempting to allow my ego space to put other people beneath me as revolting and inferior. Sometimes I just let myself roll my eyes. I give myself enough grace to roll my eyes at people. But contempt, finding other people revolting and inferior, that's contempt. And if I or you, any of us, give in to that, we become part of the problem. And so you and I must come back not to arguing about proper theology and doctrine, but plain and simple, driving the poison from our hearts and ask God for enough curiosity and grace to go forward in the name of love. I'll even say this, if this is the only thing you pray about for the rest of your life, if you never read the Bible or pray about anything else ever again, if all you do for the rest of your life is ask the Spirit to breathe gentleness and understanding into you as you exhale contempt and disgust and resentment, that's enough spiritual discipline. You can open your own spiritual center and I'll attend. So perhaps that's where we'll close today, knowing that we have work to do beyond my half-hour treatment of a complex idea. Maybe that's where we could start right now, is that we would ask for enough curiosity and grace to go forward in the name of love, that we would breathe in gentleness and curiosity and understanding, and we would breathe out those thoughts and feelings that invite us to reduce others to being something less than ourselves, that we would breathe in grace and kindness, and that we would breathe out contempt. That we would breathe in gentleness and consideration, even for the harsh and inconsiderate. And we would breathe out the part of us that gets so fed up with people that we see them as objects to be eliminated. Breathing in our collective power with one another, the spirit of this love and gentleness and wisdom. And exhaling the desperate, frustrated fear of losing power that makes us consider violence. And so as we close, continue breathing in this grace, the curiosity, kindness, breathing out contempt. And pay attention to whose names and faces come to mind as you do this. And as you're doing that, breathing in curiosity and kindness, breathing out contempt, I'll read some selections from the Bible that help us remember that we're participating in something that outlasts empires. And then together we'll go forward, empowered to bring love into our world with the light and the kindness and the seriousness of Christ. So breathe in, breathe out. Proverbs 15, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. With all lowliness and humility, with patience, bear with one another and love. Speak evil of no one, avoid quarreling, be gentle and show perfect courtesy toward all people. The wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peace-loving, gentle, compliant, full of mercy and good fruits, unwavering, without pretense. Through patience, a ruler can be persuaded, and a gentle tongue can break a bone. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, trustworthiness, gentleness, self-control. Amen.
If you would like to know more or get connected to Crosspointe, go to crosspointenc.org. If you're in need of care or assistance, go to crosspointe.org/care. And welcome home.